Hello and welcome to Winslow Academy. In this course, we'll be looking into Splunk and how to use Splunk for beginners. So we will get a basic introduction to Splunk and what it is, and how we can install it on a virtual machine, and then how to navigate around it and get to use all its features to analyze and collect data. So, first of all, what is Splunk? Well, Splunk is a company specializing in data use and processing. So, what Splunk basically does is that it collects data and aggregates it and process it in order for us to get a better understanding of what we are seeing in our environments. And this especially counts for logging. So, for example, when you have firewalls, all the traffic in the firewalls generate a lot of data, and it can be very hard to filter through it all manually. But Splunk utilize a very easy way for us to index this data and then search in the indexes afterwards. And you can also in Splunk add different components to make some of this analysis machine learning driven such that it can do it for you. So in this video, we'll be looking into Splunk products and resources. We'll be looking at parts of Splunk, and then lastly, we'll be setting up Splunk using a virtual machine in Kali Linux. So, Splunk products and resources. There are four different core components in Splunk. They have the Splunk Free, Splunk Lite, Splunk Enterprise, and Splunk Cloud. And then they have specialty focuses in the Splunk Enterprise Security, user behavior analysis, IT service intelligence, Insight for infrastructure, and Amazon Web Service cloud monitoring, and Insight for ransomware, and for industrial IoT, and a lot more. And if you navigate to the website, which we will do in 1 second, we can see these components and some of the things that you can do on the website. Because on the website, they also have a very active community answering questions, such that you can go on their forum and find answers to maybe some of the problems that you will be facing once you start to use Splunk yourself. So let's head over there and see what you can use their web page and forum to. So here we are at the homepage splunk.com, where you can read all about the different products that they have in their product line. So you can, for example, go here into Explore, and then you can see the core and some of the different stuff that you can add and what they are specialized in. So for example, we can go into the Insight for Amazon Web Service Cloud, and let's see if that will load. And here you can first of all download a free trial. You can also watch a demo of this particular product, and you can read some more about it. But the real nice thing about their websites, besides that you can look up what kind of product they have, is that you can benefit from their resources and documentation. So for example, if you are interested in reading the documentation for the product you're using, you can go down here to documentation, and then you can find and choose the product that you are using. So for example, on the core product, we can click more here, and let's say we want to see Splunk Lite. Then we enter this, and then you will see the getting started manual and some other stuff. But if you choose a more comprised product, for example the Enterprise, you will see that you can see how to deploy it, you can see how to add data, and there is a lot of stuff here. But what you will also find on the website is the, let's see, is the community, the Splunk answers here. So if you go here, you will see their forum where people can ask questions and get answers from the community or from Splunk employees themselves. And as you see here, this is a very active community. For example, we have here a comment 45 seconds ago, 1 minute, 17 minutes. So asking questions here or looking for answers is a really good thing, because there is a high possibility that someone else has had a problem before you or asked the question of how to do some kind of stuff, and that someone has actually answered it. Because as you see here, there is a lot of answers for each of these threads right here. And since it is so active, there is a high possibility that if you find a new area with a new question that nobody has answered yet, that someone will look into this rather quickly. Because, for example, here I'm on page 5, and page 5 was answered yesterday. So this means that from yesterday and until now, there has been 5 entire pages of questions and answers. So this is really nice about the Splunk community. So now that we have seen where you can get documentation and answers on your question, let's head back to the slide and get started with setting up our Splunk environment. So now that we have seen the Splunk homepage and where you can find the forum for support, we'll be looking at parts of Splunk. So in Splunk, they have the data pipeline, which consists of input, parsing, indexing, and searching. So the data input is where we have our forwarders, which we also will learn how to install in this course. And basically what they do is to take the data that is coming in, so the data input, and that could be from, for example, firewalls, they can be from different network devices. It could also be for login requests sent to our application, or basically anything that is going on backend on our applications or on our devices. Our data input is then forwarded to our parsers, where it is getting parsed, meaning that it will be added with timestamp, there will be some metadata added to it, and there will be done a lot of processing here before it gets into the different indexes. So our index is a way for us that we can index the different data that we get in. So our index could, for example, be the firewall logs that we have in one index. So we will take all the data coming from our firewall and collect them all into one index, such that our employees who is responsible for the firewalls will only have to look in that particular index when he's searching, instead of having to look at the data that is coming in from our entire application suite. So you can divide your data into different indexes in order for it to be searched more efficiently. And the last part here is, of course, the search. And here Splunk presents a very nice user interface where you can type in different search queries similar to when you're using Google, and then it will look in the indexes and find whatever data is matching based on the index you are searching in. So either you are searching in, for example, one index, or you are searching in multiple indexes in order to find data that you're looking for. So Splunk will help you filter all the garbage away, which is not interesting based on what you're looking for, and then it will present you with relevant stuff. And you can of course also set Splunk up to act and do stuff based on what data is coming in, so that you don't have to search manually to find something. Because, for example, if you have a lot of errors in your backend, you want to have a trigger when a lot of occurrences is coming from your backend saying that this job is failing, this job is failing, instead of waiting for one of your employees or yourself to type in a search query and see, oh, we have a lot of errors and that this has been gone on for 10 days. So you want to have some triggers that act based on what data is being passed and indexed in your Splunk setup. So now that we have seen the parts of Splunk, we'll be going on to setting up our Splunk environment. And when you're planning your environment, you need to take into consideration if you have a unusual setup. Are there some particular things that you need to be aware of? You also need to be aware of what operation system you're using. Is it Windows? Is it Linux? And when you are playing around with Splunk, you should try to match such that your test and practice environment is also the environment that you will work on in production, because then you will get more familiar with how Splunk works in this particular environment, such that you are not training on Windows and how to use it and install it and set it all up on Windows, and then when you move into production you will be using Linux, because then you will meet some challenges that were not present on Windows and vice versa. So in this course we'll be using Linux. So let's head over and get started with setting up our Splunk environment. So I'm now over in my VirtualBox Kali Linux, where I'm going to install Splunk. If you're unfamiliar with VirtualBox and how to install Kali Linux, I will be linking to a video from my channel in the top right corner here, where you can see how to set up this Kali Linux distribution in a VirtualBox. And basically when you get into the virtual machine, all you need to do is open a web browser and then navigate to, for example, this page right here. I'll be linking to this in the comment, because this will show you a guide of the commands that you need to execute to install Splunk. You can also just go to the site we visited earlier, splunk.com, and then find the product that you want a free version of. You'll be using Enterprise, and for example, if you click here, you will see you need to sign up to be able to download it. So we'll just follow this tutorial right here where we can have the commands and install without signing up. So we will be copying this right here, this command. Then we'll head over to our terminal, and we have it here. So let me just zoom in a bit. Or let me use this terminal here instead. Yeah, that is sound. So we'll just be pasting this in. And then we'll be downloading our Splunk distribution. And while this is being downloaded, let's head back to this. And then we see here, once you have run this command and the download has completed, then run the following command where we are unpacking this. So we will just be copying this right here and head back. And let's see if this will finish soon. And now we have it. And if we do ls to list what we have in the current directory, we see that we have our installation depth here. So let's paste this in. And then we need the sudo password for this Kali distribution, and we'll just enter this. Can't access no such file, and let's see. And that is because what we have here does not match this version here. So let's just say instead of this, and then we will be copying the name here, and then we will do delete this part and paste in the name. Oh, did we? Yeah, wait. So we just copied in the same part, so let's not do that again. Let's do it like so. And say copy. Delete this. And say paste. And now that we have chose the right name, which is the version that we installed, because this installation version were two version numbers higher than the one that the example on the website used. So while this is unpacking, we'll go in here and see what the next step is. So the next step is to use this sudo of splunk bin splunk start, because we need to start off Splunk. So we'll be copying this. And if we read further here, then it say this will prompt you with the Splunk license, and we can use the space just to scroll through it, and Y for saying yes to accept the agreement. And then we should be able to open up the Splunk in our web browser using a local endpoint. So let's head back, and it is complete. So let's paste in this, and we'll just use space. And yes. So now we just need to enter a new admin password. So we'll just type oh, the complexity requirement. So we'll just choose another one. Let's see, start here. So now that we chose a password that complied with the complexity that is required, 8 total printable ASIC characters, we should be able to navigate to this page. So let's just copy this. And let's see. And then we have a username, and that will be admin, and the password that you chose. And welcome to Splunk. So now we have, just skip, Splunk installed on our virtual machine, and we are ready to get on with the next lecture. Hello, and welcome back to Vensloof Academy. This is our Splunk tutorial. In the last lecture, we saw how we could install the Splunk Enterprise on a Kali Linux virtual machine. So here we are using VirtualBox, where we have the Splunk Enterprise application installed, and it is running on our local IP on port 8000. So now we want to set up our universal forwarder, which is the one that will provide this enterprise application that we have running here with the data, so that we can search and analyze it. So first of all, if you go to settings and forward management, you will see that there is nothing yet because we don't have any forwarder set up yet to communicate with this Splunk Enterprise. So what we will do is to be installing the universal forwarder from splunk.com. So we will head over to our main operation system, which for my part is Windows. And here I will go to Explore, and I will go to Free Trials and Download. And then we will basically scroll down here, and we will be downloading this Splunk Universal Forwarder. So we'll click Download Now. And normally you will need to create an account in order to be able to download, but you can just click View Page Source or View Source Code based on your browser. And then in here we will just search for .msi. So here we get the link to the installation package for Windows for the Universal Splunk Forwarder. And if you want for example Mac, you can just click .dmg or for example .tar if you want some other file type. But we will stick with this one. And as you see here, I have already downloaded, but basically to do so, you will just be copying the link here, go into a new browser and type it in, and then you will be start downloading. Once that is downloaded, you should be able to open up the installation, and then we will walk through the installation together. So now that we have downloaded the Splunk Universal Forwarder installer, it's time to install this on our computer. So first of all, we'll be saying check this box to accept the license agreement. Then we'll type next. Then we'll just choose a user, let's say, and a username and password. So we'll say like this. Then we need the host name and IP and the default port. I'll be linking to the Splunk website where you can see all the default ports for the search header, the indexer, and so on. If you're not changing these manually, they will all be the same for the entire Splunk enterprise. So in order for us to get our IP, we go into our Linux virtual machine here, into the terminal. In here we type sudo ifconfig, enter our password, and then we have the IP right here. So this is where our Splunk enterprise is hosted. So we'll type in this for our universal forwarder to communicate with this. So we say 196.168.0. And then we just use the default port 889. Click next. And then we need the indexer to have same IP here. And then just the default port again. Then we click next. And then we click install. So once the installation is complete, we click finish here. We can close this, and then we need to open the services on our Windows machine where the universal forwarder is installed. And then we go down to Splunk forwarder service right here, and we just restart this to ensure that this is set up correctly with the IP that we just entered and the port. So now that this has restarted, we can just close this and head back to our Splunk Enterprise, go to settings, forwarder management, and then this will take a few seconds for it to register. So if we try to refresh, and as you see, after a couple of refreshes, we now have one client attached to our Splunk Enterprise. So this is our Windows computer that is now communicating and collecting data and sending this to Splunk. So now that we have set up the Splunk server, the enterprise server we have in our Kali Linux, and we have connected our Splunk forwarder from our Windows machine, and these two are now communicating, we are ready to move on to the next section where we are going to look into the data that is being sent. So see you next time here on Winslow Academy. Hello and welcome to Winslow Academy. This is part 3 in our Splunk tutorial for beginners. In the first two lectures we saw how we could download and run Splunk Enterprise on our Kali Linux virtual machine, and in part 2 we saw how we could install a universal forwarder on our main desktop, our Windows 10 operation system, and get the two of them to communicate together. In this lecture we will look at how to get data into the system from a um, uh, fetched file, and we will look at how to set up indexes and different kind of data that we can get into Splunk. So first of all, here in my virtual machine, I have been running Wireshark, which basically analyze and collect all the packages going through the network. So I opened up Wireshark, set it to capture packages, and then I just went online and clicked around a few websites just for us to get some data. Afterwards, I clicked File, and then I just exported the entire package into a simple CSV file. So now I have this in a CSV file, which I can then add to my Splunk to get a better view of the data by adding indexes to it, and then get an understanding of what Splunk is capable of. So we'll click Add Data, and then we click Skip, and we will click Upload because we already have a file, and we'll go in here, and then we click on Networking CSV, double click on that, then we see this is done, then we'll click Next, and here we can set the source type. For now we'll just be going by the default, and as you see here, Splunk has already tried to set this up in different in a table format with different columns and so on. So we'll just be using this, but you can also create your own. But as Splunk is automatically seeing that this is probably network packages, it has created this nice view automatically. So we'll just be using this as default. So we'll click Next, and we will just say that this is the standard. So, and we will be using a default index. You can create your own index here, and then you can choose it right here. But we'll, for this demonstration in this lecture, we'll just be using the default, and then we will click Preview, and this is fine because you basically haven't changed anything. But be sure that this is the file that you actually wanted to upload, and then we'll click Submit. So the file has now been successfully updated. So we can now go to Start Searching. And as you see here, Splunk Enterprise has now made this CSV file available to us in a table format that is pretty nice set up. So it understands that we have some time format in this, and this is the time for when the network packages were made. It also has made an event table where it is now set to source. It is our networking CSV, the host is Kali, and the source type is CSV. And then all the content of this file is then divided into multiple pages right here, which we can go through. And besides that, Splunk has also picked out some interesting fields for us. So it understands that there are some protocols in use here. So if we click protocols, it will tell us that it found these types of protocols. So TCP, TLS, DNS, and TLS 1.2, where this is 1.1.3. And here it also counts the amount of protocols that it has registered in this file. And since this is a networking file, it's quite predictable that there will be a lot of protocols and a high amount of them. So TCP were counted 146 times, and that account for 45% of all in this file. And then you can just look here. So Splunk server, this is our Kali. So in total, it counted 327 entities. And then you can, for example, extract a new field. So if you want our own field besides the one that Kali has, not Kali, that Splunk has found for us, we can create our own filters. So we'll try to do one here. So here we'll be choosing a record that we're going to use. So we'll, for example, take this one right here. Then we'll click next. Then we can choose regular expression or delimiters. We'll click regular expression. And here we want to choose the exact value that we're looking for. So for example, here we'll be selecting the IP here, and we'll call this IPs. And then we'll say add extraction. And then we see here that it found these values to be part of the IPs field value here. And if you want to look at the regular expression it uses, we can see it right here. So for now we'll just say that this is fine, even though we have one right here which also comply with our regular expression, but you can fine tune that. But you can see here it found a lot of IPs, so we can click next here, and we can click next, and then we will see here that we have the extract and then IPs, and we have the owner admin. You can change that in the administration panel where you can set rules for different groups, but we are logged in as admin, so we are the owner of this. And we have the regular expression and the sample event that we use to extract this. So we'll click finish right here, and now we can say explore the fields I just created in search. So as you see here, we now have under the interesting fields, we have the one we just created, IPs, and if we click here, it found the IPs for us, and again it counted the use of them. So now we see that we have this amount of this particular IP, which account for nearly half of all the IPs, and then we have the other IPs right here. So this is a really nice way that you can extract fields that are not automatically detected by Splunk. And in most cases you will need to do so if you want more advanced logging and alert triggers on your Splunk enterprise. So this was an example of how you could upload data from a network file collected with Wireshark, and how you can create and extend upon the fields that Splunk is capable of filtering based on the data that you have entered in that file. So see you next time here on Winslow Academy. Hello and welcome to Winslow Academy. In the last lecture, we saw how we could take a file from FileZilla and upload it into our Splunk enterprise. So in this lecture, we'll build on top of what we learned in part 2 of how to set up a universal forwarder on our local machine and make it talk to our Splunk enterprise, which is currently running in a virtual box on a Kali Linux distribution system. So here we have the universal forwarder from our main machine, the Windows, which has last phoned home to the Splunk enterprise until 12 days. So what we're going to do now is to make the right configs for this to send data and basically logs from the Windows machine into our Splunk Enterprise before we then restart and turn this on again, so that we can see that these are being sent. So first of all, you need to navigate on your machine where the Universal Forwarder is installed into the Splunk Universal Forwarder folder under etc. system local. In here you sorry, you will find the input.conf file. This you will open, and you will just choose any text editor. That should be fine. And then you see right here that this is the host name, which is also equal to the machine that is currently talking to our Splunk Enterprise. So in this file you will be adding something similar to this. So you want to add the monitor config parameter, which is where you're going to monitor changes. So I have made a local log folder in my document folder where I'm going to monitor everything that is going on in there. So you can copy this and basically set it in right here, and then I'm going to call this index local machine. So you need to remember what you're calling this, because you also need to create that index within Splunk Enterprise, which we'll do in a minute. So now I'm going to save this like so, and then for good measure we'll just try to open this and see if it's saved, and yes it is. So what we need to do now to enable our universal forwarder is to head into search. Here we will type services, which we also did in part 2 of this tutorial series. And in services we will go down and then we will find the Splunk universal forwarder. So let's see, here it is, and right now it is not running because the status is empty, which means it's not running. It will have this running if it is. So what we are going to do here is to first type refresh and then just start, and then the Splunk folder will start up once again, and we should be able to see that it is again phoning home to our Splunk Enterprise. So while this starts up, we will head over to Splunk Enterprise here, and then we will go to settings, and then we will go under forwarding and receiving. And here we'll configure a new receiver, so we'll just add new. And here we'll just choose the basic port, which were the port we also used in part 2 when we installed the Universal Forwarder on our host machine. So we'll just save this. And now the status is enabled for this. Then we will head over here, and then we will click indexes, because we need to create this index that we chose. So we'll say new index right here, and then we will just copy this here so that we are sure that the name is exactly the same. So local machine, and we will not config any of these because we will just use this as an example, but there is a lot of things that you can configure obviously. So we'll just click save, and now it shows up right here. And then we will just head over to this, and then we will say forwarding, no, let's see, forwarder management, because now this should have started up because this is running now. And then when we refresh this, there might be a little delay before this starts to phone home because we just restarted it. And as you see now, we now have one client communicating, and it phoned home to the Splunk Enterprise a few seconds ago. So that is nice. So now we will just head over to the folder that we told the forwarder to monitor. So we'll just enter this here. And now we are in the folder. So I will just be creating a new file, just a text file, and I will say hello. And I can also open this and say hello Splunk and save this. So now we have created a text file within the folder that we have just told our universal forward to monitor. So now it should have registered that we have done something within this folder and send it to our Splunk Enterprise for logging within the index. So if we click here, just to head back, then we will click search and reporting. And in here we need to choose the index, and in here we will say local machine, and it pops up here, and we'll basically just search for the last 24 hours. And as you see, we have one event, and it says hello Splunk, and we can click in on this, and it registered that in this particular folder we created the hello.txt, and it prints the value here, so hello Splunk. So this is a way that you can make your universal forwarder to communicate with Splunk Enterprise, such that you can have multiple machines and collect the logs and the events happening on these into the Splunk Enterprise, instead of just manually capturing a file and then send it and upload it as we did in part 3. So see you next time here on Winslow Academy.